Hey everybody, welcome to RTP Overtime. This is a little different. We haven't tried this before. This is kind of our dry run. John and I are exploring our sports talks bodies a little bit here, and hopefully something magical will come of it. A little bit different format. We're not going to have a full rundown for you or anything. We're really just going to focus on one topic. It's going to be a much more condensed version of the show. Maybe it's something that we couldn't get into another show. We also don't have things like I said, a whole bunch of topics or a whole bunch of other hosts that have garbage opinions. Jake, Suicide Squad was awful. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Just like with your Mo Money Mo Mozgov, we had to, we tried to come up with a clever intro to the segment. Do we need to come up with a clever intro? Should it be something like, whether it's the 11th frame, the 19th hole, or extra innings, this is RTP Overtime.
Man, that is super corny, and so yes, I will always support corny shit. I will always support it.
I was going for like a 60 minutes vibe.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're trying to be serious here?
No.
Oh, wait, no. Wait, is 60 minutes really trying to be serious anymore? They can't be. But guys, we're here today, and John and I got into a discussion last night. The cops weren't called, but, noses were bloodied. We'll put it that way. And John and I got into a discussion, and John and I are on 100% opposite sides of the fence. We are 180 from one another on this. And the topic we got into was, should professional athletes, should pros be allowed in the Olympics? And John, I wanted to hand it over to you and just, where did this come from for you, and what is your opinion on the idea of professional athletes being in the Olympics? Because right now we're recording this, obviously, during the middle of the Rio 26 Olympics.
Right. So 1992 was the first time we saw basketball with professional players, right? I believe that was right. So I was 14,
yes.
and so I was 14 in 1992. So I was a teenager the first time I saw professionals in the Olympics. I remember what basketball looked like before that, and I feel like basketball in the 80s in the Olympics looked a lot like the problems that we're having with college basketball today. That one and done mentality, what that's kind of done to college basketball, that really was the product that I feel like Olympic basketball was. It was guys that, straight out of high school, clearly amateurs. We had some good teams. We had some guys that did some stuff. But basketball was just not the product. The Olympics is about being the best of the best. So in my mind, professional or not, you put your best athletes for your country on the field if we're going to call the Olympics the epitome of sport.
So and let's clarify a couple of things for the audience, and quite frankly for you and me before we go, because I've had these discussions before. I've had these should pro athletes be in the Olympics before. Really, are you saying anyone who's a professional who depends entirely upon this for their income shouldn't be allowed, or is this? And I'm not trying to minimize your argument or minimize your position, but is your argument basically going to boil down to NBA players and NHL players in hockey shouldn't be allowed to play in the Olympics? Is that the crux of your argument, or is it? What do you define as professionals? Because certainly, someone like Phelps. Michael Phelps isn't an accountant for 3.5 years, and then he's a swimmer every 4 years. He's a professional swimmer. That's all he does with his life. What do you define as a professional? So I can make sure we're on the same playing field.
Well, so first of all, I define a professional as somebody that makes more than 50% of their income from a given thing. It's kind of the same idea as how the U.S. the states define residency for a state. You live in the state for more than 50% of the time, you're a resident of the state. You make more than 50% of your money from a sport, you're a professional in that sport.
Okay. Well, and see, that's I guess where my position gets boxed in a little bit, because I disagree with you in the sense that, if we focus it on one sport, let's focus it on basketball for just a minute. Sure. You believe that it's no problem that somebody who's an NBA player plays in the Olympics, correct?
Correct.
You have no issue with that?
Correct.
No issue whatsoever?
None.
Okay. See, I have an issue with that, and here's where my issue comes from. Mine is a little bit different, in that I don't have a problem with somebody who's a professional athlete playing in the Olympics. Because like I just said, I have no problem with Michael Phelps being in the Olympics, and Michael Phelps isn't a bus driver or a substitute school teacher the other 3.5 years. He's always a professional swimmer. That's what he does.
Right, he's just the greatest swimmer to ever swim, possibly, arguably, the greatest athlete to ever live.
And I agree with that. Now swimming's not a sport, obviously swimming is just not drowning, okay? It's common sense, okay? It's like running. Running is just exercise, okay? It's something you do in sports, but it is not a sport itself.
But it's the base for all sporting.
No, not swimming. Running isn't if you think swimming's a sport, then your whole argument just falls apart there. Here's my thing. Here's my position. I asked you, are you basically just talking about NHL and NBA players? And when I say that professionals shouldn't play, that's who I'm talking about. Here's my position is, should LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and Draymond Green and Kevin Durant be out there on the floor for the United States? Well, clearly not, considering we just beat Serbia 93-91 last night. So no, they shouldn't be out there on the court. But no, in all seriousness, I don't feel that NHL and NBA players should be out there. And now that golf is joining the Olympics, I don't feel that people who are playing at Augusta, people who are playing at majors, and who are playing for PGA championships shouldn't be out there, or playing in the Ryder Cup or whatever it may be shouldn't be out there, simply because I don't want to see people play a watered-down version of the sport. Essentially, my position is this. If the Olympics is not the pinnacle of your sport, you shouldn't be playing there as a professional. Can you tell me how many medals Michael Jordan won? Or tell you what better. What can you tell me how many medals LeBron James has won and what they were, off the top of your head?
I would assume that he's won at least one gold medal for U.S. basketball.
You would assume, but you know that he's won 3 NBA finals. What means more, winning a gold medal in the Olympics in basketball or winning the NBA finals?
I think probably for an American professional basketball player, of course it's winning the NBA finals. But I think for a Serbian, losing to the U.S. by 2 points is probably a big deal. And for a Serbian, winning a medal is probably, winning an Olympic medal is a bigger thing. I think perhaps where your argument falls down is its myopic nature. And I don't mean as a slam on you. I mean it as you're only looking at it from the standpoint of an American and what they're going to care about with basketball. There are other countries, Spain being one of them, that take the Olympic and international play way more seriously than we do. And just like you've talked about in the past, the NBA players don't all play for the U.S. So there are NBA players playing for other countries, right? So yes, the concentration is different because we have a lot more NBA players than most other countries do, just like Canada tends to have a concentration difference in the Winter Olympics when we're talking about the NHL. And if baseball had stayed in the Olympics, we'd probably be talking about the Caribbean nations as far as baseball players. But the fact of the matter is, in my view, if we're gonna say who is the best at a given sport, and that's what international sport is, we want to figure out what country produces the best athletes in a given sport, then it shouldn't matter whether you make money or not. If you are a specialist at that sport, you should be competing in that sport if we're determining who the best in the world is. And that's where I stand with it.
See, and John, I'm not arguing. See, I'm taking it one step further. I would not argue. Where I was going with that is, clearly the NBA Finals is the pinnacle of all of all basketball. Clearly, the NHL Stanley Cup is the pinnacle of all hockey, and clearly, I mean, some people will say it depends whether you're talking about the Masters or whether you're talking about the PGA Tour Championship. Obviously, the Masters has the history, whatever. Obviously, the Masters or winning the PGA Tour Championship means a lot more than I think winning a gold medal in golf will, because we already have international golf competitions. We already have international basketball competitions, and they don't mean anything. Even soccer, I'll take it a step further. What means more, winning a gold in the Olympics in soccer, which is a team that's thrown together in a few weeks, or winning the World Cup? Clearly, the World Cup brings in 10 times the viewers. It means significantly more to these people. And I'm, as a non-soccer fan who's saying that, clearly the NBA Finals means more, and you say, well, there's other countries. Yeah, but the best of those other countries, you mentioned Spain. Pau Gasol is coming over here to play. You talk about Germany. Dirk Nowitzki is coming over here to play. This is their main job, is coming to the NBA trying to win an NBA Finals. So I'm not arguing that these guys shouldn't be allowed. I'm arguing these sports shouldn't be in the Olympics, period. I don't think basketball has a place in the Olympics today, because the Olympics were meant to be the culmination of all these different nations sending their absolute best, and if it's not going to be a big deal, it shouldn't be there. Baseball, for example, the Baseball World Classic or whatever it's called doesn't mean dick. Nobody cares about it. The World Series means so much more. That's the pinnacle of all baseball, and that's why I don't think baseball should ever be in the Olympics, because it's just a side act. You know, it's not actually what you just said, we want to prove who's the best at these things. It's just a side act. It's just an attraction show. It's not really showing anything. It's not showing the highest level. That's the right word I'm looking for. It's not the highest level of competition of these things. That's the NBA Finals. That's the highest level. So in my opinion, basketball shouldn't be there, period. Doesn't matter if we have amateurs or we have NBA players. It just shouldn't be a part of the Olympics, is how I look at it. So de facto, no, I'm saying those guys should not be there.
I agree with you that the Olympics doesn't necessarily represent the pinnacle of basketball anymore, but here's where we differ. Without the Olympics, Paul Gasol doesn't play against the U.S., the United States, as a member of Spain for an Olympic gold medal. Basketball, the reason sports like basketball, let's face it, are in the Olympics is because it's one of the most popular world sports. Soccer
TV
is in
rights,
the Olympics
yeah.
because it is the most popular world sport. Hockey is in the Olympics because even though it doesn't get a lot of viewership in the U.S., unfortunately, because the NHL is amazing, I apologize.
Amazing product-wise, a mess as far as marketing.
Right. I apologize. There's somebody mowing the lawn, but I don't want to cut off my thought. These sports are in the Olympics because they are the most popular sports. They draw in a huge amount of viewership, and the Olympics needs that in order to stay relevant. There are Olympic sports that I think they can get rid of and replace them with more popular sports, and it sounds like Japan's going to do some of that in 2020. But things like, I think the days of equestrian in the Olympics are long gone. There is not enough support for that sport anymore.
And we say sport. I know you people can't see us. We say sport with the biggest rabbit ear quote finger quotes we possibly can. What's the one that's basically horse dancing? What's it called?
That's eventing. It's part of the equestrian.
It's horse dancing. The person on the back of the horse isn't. I mean, I'm sure they're doing something. It's sort of like how I criticized judo the other day. I'd never seen judo, and to me, it looks like every drunk fight in a parking lot that I've ever seen before, because it's just two people grabbing one another. They're not actually throwing kicks or punches. I'm sure it's very difficult what they do, but it just looks goofy to me. But the horse thing, at least in judo, you're the one competing. In the horse thing, the horse is the one competing.
Yeah, and that's
No.
my issue. That's my issue with the equestrian sports. Now, I'll tell you, things like the race jumping and things like that, they're a lot of fun to watch. I enjoy watching them, but it's difficult for me to consider it a sport unless we're going to say the sport is for the horses. I understand there's a lot of skill involved in it with humans. I get that. But the fact of the matter is, for the Olympics, it's supposed to be about human competition, and I don't think we should be using other live beings to determine human competition. And there's just not support to watch a sport like that anymore. So I think you can get rid of things like that. And then in 2020, Japan's adding baseball back, and I think it's a good thing. I was going to say, to bring the whole thing back around to its original point, my point stands that I'm of the mindset that if we are going to say, if the Olympic Committee decides this sport will be in the Olympics, then that sport needs to send its best representatives to each country, because it's different. Like I was I said before, Pau Gasol can't go and play as a representative of Spain against the United States while he's wearing he's a Laker, right? While he's wearing a Lakers jersey.
Now he's a Spur.
Now he's a Spur. That's right. I forgot he got traded. So he can't wear a Spurs jersey. Or he can't wear a Spain jersey. He wants to represent his nation. And the Olympics has always been noticed. That's why we restarted it in the late 1800s after, it was a thing in ancient times. We've always considered it the pinnacle of sport. I agree with you. The pinnacle of sport for for basketball is the NBA. But we have to pull it out of the U.S. and say, okay, what's the pinnacle of sport for international play? So that because we have a history of countries competing with each other. The Olympics does that. It provides that stage. It's a huge stage because it's considered the biggest sporting event in history. And since the Olympic Committee has decided this is a sport, sending professionals make guarantees that you get the best people there. competing for that sport, so you know who the best is on any given day.
Well, and I guess that's the point where we're going to miss one another is yes, I agree that if you're going to have a sport, there's no reason, obviously, outside of doping or anything like that, that you shouldn't have the best people there. But you said it there. The Olympics was meant to be the pinnacle of these sports, and you concede that the NBA Finals is the pinnacle of the NBA. And in fact, I would argue the rest of the world does, considering globally, the NBA Finals kills the NBA, the Olympics numbers for the NBA. I'm looking at the numbers from 2012. Nearly 5 times the amount of viewers globally were watching as opposed to were watching the finals for the 2012 games. It's just not the same. It's not held in the same regard. So my argument is get rid of these things. What people want to see. I mean, what's the highest rated thing right now? What's the most popular sport and has been for the last 3 Summer Olympics? It's been swimming. Where the fuck did swimming come from? That's become the most popular thing because you have the storyline. You've got this Michael Phelps guy. You've got this guy who's gone out there and has completely dominated the sport, and everybody loves to see that. People like to see those things, which, on a side note, I didn't realize how many countries have never, like Croatia, has never won a medal ever in the Olympics. Their first ever medal was a gold in judo this year.
Yeah, like, Kazakhstan just won their first gold medal in swimming.
No wonder the world hates us. I've always wondered as an American, like, why do you hate us? Like, we gave you the internet and computers and cell phones and Phillips head screwdrivers. We invented that. We invented all these great fucking things. Why would you hate us? I get it now. Because the only 2 countries that are relevant in the Olympics are America and China. We're the only 2 that matter. We're the only 2 that mean
Well,
anything.
Obviously Russia usually is too, right? But
well, in the Winter Olympics, Russia's a big deal.
About
Yeah.
that.
But we're
still number
dominate.
1. But this is, I gotta say this, Lou. We're number 1 in the entire world. And our Olympic team is a completely volunteer thing. There is no state-sponsored sports program. The U.S. government doesn't give the U.S. team money. It's all donations and voluntary money. And we're still the best in the world.
All right, socialist. I don't care. No, but
that's the opposite of socialism.
But no. But my point is no. You're right. But I just, it's incredible to see how, for granted, we're sitting here saying, "Oh man, we only broke 4 world records this year in swimming," whereas there are other nations. It's not even fair. Like, I'm sitting here, I was watching, what was it last night? I don't know the girl's name. We were at dinner and it was on on the TV in the restaurant, and there was a girl. She's 19 years old. She's an American. She's 19, and she like crushed is it like a 1,500-yard medley or relay race that you do in the pool? It's something stupid. Like what? Like the 1,200-meter race, which is like 9 times up and down the pool. Like, fuck, I would do one of those and take a 20-minute break and have a cigarette. Like, there's no way I could swim that pool 9 fucking times.
I think who you're thinking of is Ledecky, and she beat the she won by 5 seconds and beat her own world record by like 2.5
so she
3.
crushes the old world record. There's a girl from like Kazakhstan or from like Uzbekistan or something like that, back behind one of these countries that's, somewhere I would never go. That's away. Yeah, one of these horrible places that you couldn't point out on a map, and it finishes like a minute and a half behind her. Jesus, no wonder the rest of the world hates us. But see, but taking it back to the beginning, that's another thing. We dominate a particular sport. We dominate basketball. And so even the people from the country who are dominating, now granted, like I said, I'm saying this the night after the U.S. barely beat Serbia, but the people from a country don't care. The ratings for the national basketball team here in America are down and have been down the past 3 Olympics. It was a big deal when we put the first Dream Team together back in '96, when we had Jordan and Bird and Johnson and Olajuwon and all these different guys on the team. That meant something, but today it doesn't mean anything. Today it's just a marketing campaign, and it's a marketing campaign that's falling flat. So my argument is, let's get rid of that. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares about it. So in turn, you end up getting rid of the professional athletes. For me, it just goes against what the spirit of the Olympics are supposed to be. The Olympics are supposed to be the pinnacle of these games, whether it be swimming, whether it be running, whether it be something. Nobody can tell me. I guarantee you the average person can't tell me how many world swimming titles Michael Phelps has won, but they can all tell me 22 gold medals. They all know that 22 gold medals because that's the pinnacle of the sport. And so I just think you've got to get things like basketball out of there. Now, you mentioned baseball. What do you think about baseball? Because the early words coming out is that there's only going to be 15 to 20 countries that are going to field a team for this. What do you think the threshold of the cutoff? Like, everybody can do swimming, everybody can do pole vaulting. 90 some or 100 some odd countries can do that. But in baseball, if you've only got 20 or 25 teams max that are going to be competing, do you think it even deserves a spot in the Olympics?
So first, I just want to put a pin on the last thing you said and say that my view is that the Olympics still is the pinnacle of international play. And that's why I think, especially because of their popularity, sports like this are going to get left in. As far as baseball is concerned, I really think, especially with the number of Caribbean countries and some of the Asian countries that are also really good at baseball, I think you could do a 32-team pool and set it up exactly the way that soccer is set up. 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, 0 points. Half the teams get out of pool play, and then you go into a round of 16 and you play.
But
through
obviously,
it like that.
you won't have any ties in baseball. It'll just continue going into extra
True.
innings for however long.
True.
Well,
okay, so in that regard, maybe you set it up like a 32-team basketball, the way that they do, the way that they set up their pool play, and then you go into a round of 16 after pool play's done.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I do not give two shits about the Olympics. I do not care. It doesn't mean anything to me. I really do not care about it at all. In soccer, they have a series. There's a tournament that goes on for a couple of months that determines who gets to be in the tournament at the Olympics. Period. Right?
Correct.
Like there's qualifiers. Right? Okay. So we'd have to do that with baseball. The problem I see with baseball for an American team doing something like that, if you were to have this tournament, the baseball off season. Especially if you're going to have guys who've made it into the World Series, if you've got guys that are playing into late October, the baseball offseason is not particularly long. You're talking about before you hit, well, if you want to consider the offseason to be truly the offseason where guys are not in spring training and stuff, the offseason is 3.5 months long. When we play the Olympics, it goes on. That's another issue for me, is it goes on during the middle of the season. With basketball, at least it's going on during the offseason. Training camp hasn't started yet. So, some of the rookies are playing in the developmental league, obviously, but it hasn't started. In baseball, I don't understand how this is going to work if the games are going to be played in August when teams are in their playoff hunt. When teams are going after their division titles, I don't see how they're going to be able to put pro athletes from the United States on the field, or from any country that play in the United States on the field. I don't understand how that would work.
So I think what that to me just seems like a logistics issue, and I think baseball is set up better to handle something like that than other sports because of the fact that we have a complete and total farm system. Because if there are guys that can't make it from major leagues, okay, then you start plus college. Exactly. Good point. So you just continue down the steps until you find the best players that are available. And if we don't end up being the best in it because we can't send our best guys, then that's a problem that Major League Baseball would have to address. I don't think they ever will because they would lose a ton of money. So I really think if they're going to put baseball back in, and it looks like it's coming back for 2020 because Japan wants it and they're hosting, then we have a farm system that can absorb a lot of that, I think.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is a lot of the best, and then that's another thing that you've got to consider is, you've got Jose Altuve, for example, who's arguably going to be the AL MVP, and the Stros are in a position where they're trying to chase down the Rangers for a playoff spot. Are they going to let him go for 3 weeks? Hell no, the Astros aren't going to let him go for 3 weeks. They're not going to let their best player walk out for 3 weeks while they're trying to cinch up a playoff spot. So my problem would be you're not going to see, and so that's it. You're not going to have the best possible product on the field.
Agreed. You won't. You're right.
So I don't see the point in having the sport. It's not the pinnacle of the sport. People want to watch the World Series. They're not going to want to watch this. Now, if you made it so that if somehow the Olympic Committee were to have an off-season baseball thing, I wouldn't have a horrible problem with that. It kind of goes back to my argument again of, are people going to care about it in the same sense that people don't care about Olympics basketball nearly as much as they do the NBA Finals? But if there was some way they could do this in the Winter Olympics, but that kind of goes against the I don't know, I guess the spirit of the Winter Olympic Games, considering baseball is it's not a winter sport. So I just don't see logistically how you could make this thing work out, offer the best possible product, and put it together. And here's another thing. This is going to be really expensive for Japan to do, because one thing about baseball, a baseball field is, and I know you've got examples like in Miami and Oakland, a baseball field is a baseball stadium is a pretty uniquely built arena. It's not like a basketball arena where it can host, basketball and hockey, and you can have gymnastics there, and you can have concerts there, and all sorts of different things. It's not like that. It's not a whole lot you can do with Minute Maid Park here in Houston aside from have the Astros play baseball at it. So what's going to happen when these things get built? What's Japan going to do with these things?
Japan isn't going to have to build anything. They have several professional leagues.
Okay, so they're going to play in...
Oh, yeah. They'll play in professional parks that seat up to 80,000 people.
See, so why whenever the World Cup goes places, why do they have to... I mean, the World Cup always goes to places that have baseball, that have soccer fields. Why do they always have to build these stadiums?
Because they're never big enough.
Oh, okay.
That's why whenever the Olympics is held in the U.S., we never have to build anything because we just put everything in college stadiums.
Okay.
Japan will not have to touch a thing about their baseball. They have more than one professional league. So
right, yeah. Okay, well, personally, I disagree with baseball being in the Olympics because, again, you're just not going to get the best product.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you, the point that you made at the beginning of this about not putting the best product on the field and all of that stuff, I agree with you in terms of baseball. I think it's the reason why baseball was removed in the 90s, and I think it's a reason why it probably won't go past 2020 and may make its way back around the next time it's hosted in the U.S. I think the only reason it's coming back is because Japan has such a love for baseball. And I think it'll come back from the U.S. because it's one of our regional things. And that's why I think baseball continuously drops out and comes back. It's very, very regionalized. It's even way regionalized in the U.S.
Before we wrap up, name a sport that is currently in the Olympics that deserves no place there. And 2, name a sport that is not in the Olympics that absolutely should be there.
Equestrian needs to be taken out immediately. I've already said that one. And I think that a sport that absolutely needs to be there, and it actually is coming in 2020, is climbing.
Climbing? So how does that work? Do they do it inside? Do they have a preset mountain that they work on? Do you do this on a rock climbing wall? How do they do climbing?
The only ones that I know of that I've seen that they're doing is they're going to be doing speed climbing in Japan in 2020. And so it's an indoor rock climbing wall that's set up a specific way so that it's exactly the same for each, and it's a race to the top.
Are you allowed to see this thing before you get to it, or is it
don't know.
They keep it under a curtain and you don't get to see it, so
no idea,
and they give you 30 seconds to map it out in your head, or how does that work?
No idea. I don't know enough about it to answer that, unfortunately. But I do know that it is a sport that's coming in 2020, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch. And I think that the reason that I think it needs to come in is because if you look at the trajectory of the X Games, they're on the way up. We need to start thinking about some of these extreme sports as competitive Olympic sports.
Oh, I had no idea BMX until yesterday was in the Olympics. I had no idea BMX biking and mountain biking, racing, was in the Olympics. That blew me away. One thing that I would say, I agree with you, I would say either horse things, or I would say, now I say this to everyone out there, I am a Texan, I am a shooter, I am a hunter, I would get rid of the shooting events, the non-archery shooting events, anything that uses a machine like the guns, and I mean they're not they're not going out there with AR-15s. These are airsoft, very specialized pieces of equipment. I'm not a fan of that. Not a fan of watching kids who have pieces of paper over their eyes and special goggles on going out there and shooting. No, that's not fun to me. Don't care about that. So I would get rid of one of those two. Something that I want to see come back. Now, obviously, wrestling was taken out a few years ago, and I'd like to see Roman Greco wrestling come back in. But what about this? What about this? Because you talked about it. You said that basketball brings viewership, which it does. It is one of the most popular sports in the Olympics. However, as I said, it hails in comparison to the NBA Finals as far as overall viewership. What about this? MMA coming into the Olympics. What do you think about MMA going into the Olympics here? And it probably won't happen in 2020, but if it were to be either say 2024, and you could do, that's the other thing, you could do it at the summer or the winter because it's an indoor sport. It doesn't really matter. If you were to have MMA come into the Olympics, I think places that would really push for it, actually, no, Japan would really push for it. Japan's a big fighting country. Or Russia.
I was surprised that Brazil didn't push for it, to be honest with you. I'm surprised it's not already in the Olympics. It's clearly a legitimate martial arts sport, and there's already at least 4 martial arts sports in the Olympics. So I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be.
And I guarantee you MMA would be far more popular than judo or something like that. I mean, like I said, judo, for those of you who haven't seen judo, who just assumes, you don't know the difference, which I don't. Judo is, there's no punching, there's no kicking, you're just trying to throw your opponent over your shoulder. It's every fight you've ever seen in a parking lot between two drunk guys at 2 a.m. who aren't throwing punches at each other. They're just kind of grabbing onto each other. It's awful. It's garbage to watch.
It's all throws and grappling.
It's garbage to watch. I think MMA would be significantly better. The only issue that I've ever had with Olympic sports, and this comes into everything, whether it be diving or whether it be ice skating or figure skating or whatever it may be, is the subjective part of it. The thing that I respect more about swimming as opposed to like swimming or weightlifting or any of these things, these are objective. I lifted 175 kilograms, you only lifted 174, I win. When you're talking about things that get judged subjectively by different people and you assign a score to it, I understand that's the only way you can judge a sport, but that's kind of goofy. So that's the one thing that I would worry about with MMA coming in, would be how it gets judged by people. Do we have to do it like to a fucking knockout or tap out like they used to, or
let's face
or
it
do you
though,
have
we
it be
already
like a round?
do have a precedent for that, obviously, with the number of MMA leagues that there are in the world. But also, I mean, we already know that we do that kind of scoring with Olympic boxing. So
right. So there's already that scoring
and
there.
Gymnastics,
so that concern of
frankly.
mine kind of gets put away.
Right.
Yeah, with gymnastics, figure skating, all these things. So I think MMA, I don't understand why you wouldn't at least be considering it. And I mean, I don't keep up with what's going on with the Olympic Committee, with the competition committee. Maybe they are looking at these things. I don't know. But I think that'd be something really cool that we should see in the future. And obviously, and that's the great thing, it would be a global thing, because let's look at the UFC in America. Who are the biggest stars in the UFC today? People like Pena, she's from Brazil. People like McGregor, he's from he's Irish. Anderson Silva, Brazilian. All of the biggest names in the history of the sport aren't from America. So it wouldn't be like basketball, where it'd be something that we would just dominate and crush everybody. It would be a global event. Now, the biggest thing you've got to do is find a way to get these guys paid, because obviously these guys are beating the shit out of each other and putting their lives on the line. So I don't know how you do that.
Medal winners get paid. Medal winners.
Yeah, they do, but it's not significant, right? It's like $50,000 or something for winning a gold medal in something.
Yeah, it's not. Well, it's not significant to the professionals, but.
Well, yeah, that's right. I just made our audience think that I wipe my ass with $100 bills in the morning by saying that. But no, $50,000 is nothing to sneeze at. But I'm saying for something that you put 4 years of your life into to try and win $50,000, yeah, being the best in the world, I wouldn't expect $50,000. Anyways, guys, this was our first dry run. John, I appreciate this. I think this was fun. This was kind of cool to have a condensed version, have two guys going back and forth. I think this is something we're going to want to do in the future. If you guys like it, let us know. If there's any changes or anything y'all would like to see. If you'd like to see us actually get physical and do MMA with one another, that's another thing. Leave comments in the comment section below. Let us know who would win in a Red Robin style tournament between me, John, Jake, and Dom in an MMA fight. Let us know.
So just so everybody knows, I am a first-degree black belt in Taekwondo,
and just so everyone knows,
a former Taekwondo instructor,
and just so everyone knows, I watch professional wrestling. So
I'm also a blue belt in combat Hapkido.
And just so everyone knows, I have a blue belt that I wore to work yesterday, if that counts. Anyways, guys, for John, thanks so much for joining us. This is something we had a lot of fun with, and we look forward to doing it in the future. Everybody be good. Have a good weekend. Amazing product-wise, a mess as far as marketing.